Hey, so I thought I'd chat for a few minutes while I work on some clay. This is the dry process where you clean stuff out. So, oh, come on, there's enough light. It's all rough inside. I gotta get it cleaned. Anyway, how's life? I had something to talk about. My brain shut off the second I pushed the record button. It does that. So, I'm sitting here. I'm drinking. This is a teaspoon of cocoa and a shot of creamer. Non-dairy creamer. And by cocoa, I mean cocoa powder, not cocoa mix. I drink a lot of cocoa. I've always drank a lot of cocoa. I drink fancy cocoa, I drink cheap cocoa, I drink a lot of cocoa. So it was kind of funny a while back to come across a study that said cocoa, not chocolate, cocoa, has a chemical in it that can reduce MS episodes. So that was really kind of funny to come across because cocoa's always been a thing for me. I can't live without my cocoa. So mostly I'm just cleaning out the insides. And then I'll clean off the outside. And this is about as clean as it gets. I don't know if you can see that is better than this, but it is. Anyway, I didn't get a chance to fire the kiln this last weekend because I ran out of spoons before it was time, which means I need to prioritize it earlier in the weekend and not later in the weekend. Make sense? So I have 2 kilns worth ready to go. And that includes this one that isn't actually ready to go yet. I shouldn't say ready to go. I have a kiln's worth ready to go. And then I have this, which will be a kiln's worth when I'm done doing all the little scrapey bits. So Michael has a colleague that does pottery. They have a kiln. They have an electric kiln in their garage, and they do pottery. And he made a comment about my charcoal firing, and they'd never heard of that. And it kind of threw me. And it threw me because I forget. Oh, I'm trying to be polite here. So if you start out always having the money to do things right, you never learn how to do things without money. Remember when I said that firing a kiln is $75 to rent space in a kiln? Buying a kiln is $1,000 or more. The kiln that got taken off of us by a certain person, we had paid $500 for it, but it was easily an $1,800 kiln. And when I trust friends and that friend pulls a stunt like that, that's not forgivable. Just once it's proven, it's not forgivable. It's just theft. And the fact that I have people in my life who are still friends with that person kind of really, really irks me. But anyway, going back. So this coworker of the husband's had never heard of pit firing, had never heard of charcoal firing, any of the primitive ways of doing things, because she started out with enough money to do it right the first time. Electric kiln and proper facilities. But there's a part of me that has always thought and will always think that the proper way to do things is the more primitive. Does that make sense? I'm rambling. It's kind of like I have a whole bunch of cookbooks. I have a whole bunch of really, really old cookbooks. And then people want to know, how come I know how to cook so well? How come I know how to cook so many different things? And it's because you start at the base recipe and you learn from the beginning. With pottery, if you start with fire and learn from the riverbank clay, it translates really well going forward to going to a fancy shop and using real clay or processed clay and an electric kiln. But using processed clay in an electric kiln doesn't translate to doing it raw. It doesn't translate to learning how to build the fire. Okay, perfect analogy. If you learn how to drive stick, you can always drive an automatic, but if you learn how to drive an automatic, you might not know how to drive a stick. Does that make sense? Okay, that's what I'm trying to say about cooking and clay and spinning fiber and all the arts and all the sciences. If you start at the harder, earlier technique, you can translate it to the easier modern. But if you start at the modern easy, you can't go backwards easily. That's what I'm trying to say. Anyway, I give